There she was. Only this time, with someone new. It didn't matter anymore because I'd moved on and met someone from my past who rendered her unimportant. I knew there would be a confrontation on Monday that Saturday evening. I stepped into Olive Garden alone. She was there with a man I knew, but he was not her present husband. I was preparing to celebrate my niece Carrie's 15th birthday with my sister and her 2 daughters, Kathy and Kristen. We had been planning this night for more than a month. My ex-wife, Diane, was the one that rattled me. Her present husband is the man she cheated on me with throughout our brief marriage. Apparently, he was in for the same treatment. I quickly took out my phone and took a couple photos before they spotted me. Diane's face bore the same guilty expression I saw when I confronted her about the end of our 2-year marriage. I'm Edward James Whitaker, or Eddie to my family and friends. Diane Riggles, formerly Whitaker, is 31, and I'm 33. Travis Langston was the man she was with, my soon-to-be ex-business partner. We co-own CC Corp. Incorporated, a computer security company. Travis was well aware of my attitude on flirting with married ladies. When he noticed me, he saw the phone in my hand and became clearly dejected, resolved not to ruin the evening for my family. I turned away and sat on a seat to wait for the children and husband, who had left for unknown destinations with a younger woman. So I stepped in as a father figure for her daughters. Just as Diane began to move toward me and the girls entered the restaurant, I stood up and greeted them, receiving loving hugs from all 3, and realized something was amiss. She looked at Diane and said, "Don't let her get to you." She botched up. "Not you. It appears she learned nothing from your divorce." "I don't worry about her," I said. "She is here with Travis. I informed him that if I ever saw him with a married lady, our partnership would be finished. He's a shameless skirt chaser, but I believed he was serious enough about the business. Monday. I am done with him. I'll either buy his shares, sell mine, or put them on the open market." I took a long breath, letting the tension out. I smiled. "Let's have a nice meal. No distractions. Just delicious meals to celebrate you being the best mother those 3 girls could have." The supper was fantastic. Carrie adored the locket. I grabbed her and chuckled as she read the inscription to one of my favorite nieces. "Of course, your sisters are my favorites. That got me a fun punch on the shoulder as well as a nice hug and kiss. When it comes to their birthdays, the other girls will receive a locket in a different precious metal with the same inscription." I met Diane Smithers when I was fresh out of college and doing some freelancing computer security work at her office. She was a junior personal assistant, and the entire organization had been infected with a Trojan horse. The Trojan was not designed to delete any data. It simply recoded all of their user information and removed all of their passwords. I requested that someone on their team with computer entry abilities aid me with the firm assignment. Diane. I discovered the Trojan, and we traced it back to the day it was installed on the machine. I decided that it was planned sabotage, and the corporation claimed it came from a fired former employee. I recovered all of the recoded data and implemented a military-grade handshake protocol, as well as powerful anti-malware and antivirus software. With their issue repaired and the data restored, the company gave new passwords and compensated me. They also offered me a great letter of appreciation for my quick and effective job. The word got out that I could solve certain difficulties. I not only got paid, but also had a date with Diane. We hung out regularly for a few months until I asked Diane for exclusivity. She answered not yet, so I stopped asking for dates. I wasn't angry, but I was perplexed. We were together virtually every weekend, so she must have been double dating or dating throughout the week. About a month later, Diane called to inquire as to why I had not contacted. When I stated that if she wasn't ready to be exclusive, she wasn't willing to see whether our relationship could progress. We did not reconcile then. Around this time, my business was generating so much work that I required an assistant. I interviewed several people before meeting Travis, who advised me on how to further expand the firm and offered to buy 45% of it. I agreed. We ended up with 5 people, which kept us busy and lucrative. Diane contacted back a few months later, asking if I wanted to date her again. I replied I could see a way to do it, but I wouldn't seek for an exclusive agreement. I assured her that if she could date others, I could too. I emphasized that there would be no intercourse until she determined that I was the one and only. That did not go over well. I heard a click when she hung up. I was disappointed but not surprised. She wasn't one to listen to someone bring out her flaws. She phoned me a week later and invited me to a play with her. She knew I was a sucker for live theater. We went and started dating again. We dated for over a year. Diane announced one Friday after supper that she was now exclusive. I said I was not. I left. I lied. I had been exclusive, but like a small boy who had his favorite toy broken. I was still upset. She had never turned down a date with me, and there were only a few weekends when we did not go out on Friday and Saturday. She called back a few weeks later. This time she began with a surprisingly funny-sounding, "Hey, are you over your small fight?" She then giggled, "Yes, I suppose I am. Shall we start? Onlys work for me." We dated for 6 more months before I asked her to marry me. She said yes. Then she launched into planning, Element. We chose a date 6 months out and began with a family-only wedding. Diane didn't get along with my family. My mother pulled me aside and ordered me to keep a tight eye on her. She was looking at other men as we were having supper at a restaurant. I ignored her because I had an unstable mind and was just stupid. I did follow one item of her advice. To protect my business, I had my lawyer put out a prenuptial agreement. It also set punishments for adultery and maltreatment. We continued to plan, and as the wedding date approached, the guest list grew longer. She must have invited the entire high school and all of their second cousins. I invited my family. I informed Diane that, while it was her day, I would not be paying for 300 people at our reception, so she needed to find the money elsewhere or cancel the reception and have a family celebration as planned. She received the money elsewhere. The reception was so large that we had to add a second seating for dinner. The reception was a huge party, and we left late to begin our honeymoon. The cops were called to break up a fight between Diane's family members and several of her cousins. When I called my mother the next day, she said she hadn't had so much fun in ages. She also mentioned that Diane's mother would have a shiner for at least 2 weeks, and that one of her relatives had suffered a concussion. 3 others also had bruising. At least 10 persons received show car tickets for being intoxicated and unruly. We went to Jacksonville, Florida for our honeymoon. We stayed in a room on the Atlantic side of the beachside hotel. We spent time on the beach and also visited St. Augustine to see some of the other attractions. When we returned to begin our wedding celebrations, I had a little backlog of people requesting some of our services. I'd become the company's salesman. I was almost as good at computer security as Travis, but he was a true nerd with horrible interpersonal skills. The catch-up over time lasted less than a week. Diane got a job maintaining the books at a neighborhood hardware store. She also assisted with the cash register during lunches and breaks. It paid more than the minimum wage, although it was an hourly rate rather than a salary. The business was moving along nicely. My marriage is not doing well. We had been married for a little over a year when Diane began working late 2 or 3 nights per week. That would not have been an issue, but her paychecks showed no overtime and were the same size every week. I refused to put up with it and confronted her. She denied nothing. In fact, she seemed happy that I found out about her adultery. She begged for a divorce and stated that she just wanted her clothes and jewelry. I agreed, and I was single less than 18 months after getting married. About 6 months after my divorce, I noticed an announcement in the local newspaper. Miss Diane Smithers married Robert Rickles in a tiny civil wedding this past weekend. Mr. Riggles is the proprietor of Riggles Hardware and has been widowed for the past 4 years. This is their second wedding. Somehow, I wasn't surprised. I assumed she had been playing around with her boss. I continued to work while also spending more time with my sister and her daughters. I also performed a lot of butt kissing to make up with my mother. She still loved me even if I was brain dead. As the Bayer Children's Aspirin commercial stated, moms are like that. Yes, they are. I moved on but did not return to the dating pool. I was put off from participating in that scenario because of what Diane had done to me. I understood that the lying had affected me more than her adultery and divorce. After supper, I returned to my place and decided to invite the family over for a BBQ on Sunday after church. I called everyone early Saturday to arrange it up. I have a big yard and am a gadget fanatic. Have the latest charcoal smoker as well as a restaurant-grade stove and oven, because I was single again. I didn't utilize them much. Cooking for yourself isn't much fun. I have an advantage in terms of getting invitations accepted. I have an indoor pool and a huge backyard, and girls adored both and could swim like they lived in the water. So they were always on my side when I hosted parties at my home. After getting everyone on the same page about the BBQ, I went to get some charcoal hickory chips and a 14-pound beef. I included salad ingredients, pickles, olives, a couple of different sauces, ice cream, and fruit for dessert. My mother planned to make scalloped potatoes and a 3-bean dish. We'd like to split up the leftovers like we always did so that everyone save the host left with more than they had brought. After preparing the food and starting the smoker, I sat down to relax. Then the call began. The first one involved Travis claiming that nothing was going on between him and Diane. I informed him that what I witnessed made that a lie. So either you buy me out, I buy you out, or I sell my stake of the company. I instructed him to give me a figure by Monday and then get the heck out of my sight. Diane was the following call. She asked if I planned to tell Robert. I told her no, but if I didn't see a divorce notice in the paper within the next week, I'd notify him. I told him that even if you and he were cheating on me, he did not deserve to be cheated on. She returned with, "This was the first time. And you see how we ruined the plans. That does not matter. The plan was to cheat. That did not alter. I'll wager $10,000 that you'll try to meet again. If you do meet, you will complete your plans. I just don't see why you insist on marrying. If you want to screw around, there are plenty of jerks who will." I ended the call and retired to bed. The Sunday party was a blast. And what about the girls? Carrie, Kathy, and Kristen exhausted themselves swimming. The party didn't end until after 8 out. Everyone had a terrific time. Mom asked if she could stay over. She wanted to talk with me. I made up the guest room. Mom visited frequently enough that I asked her to store her sleepwear at my house. We cleaned up. I made sure the smoker was out and took a shower. Mom showered, changed into her pajamas, and we sat in the den while she talked about Diane and Travis. I understand how you feel about cheaters. I also understand that you do not belong to any groups other than work and your extended family. You go to work, get home, and that's it. You need someone in your life. You're still young. Don't let that cheating bitch ruin your passion. Now I'm exhausted. It was a fantastic celebration, and the girls exhausted me just watching them. Good night, my dear son. You're a good man. Get back outside. There are nice women out there. I love you. Then she kissed my cheek and retired to bed. I sat in the dark, thinking about what Mom had said. She made a lot of valid arguments. I decided to look into the dating scene. I'd never drank, so the pub atmosphere wasn't my thing. But I enjoyed dancing, and there were a few country dance clubs in town. I decided to check them out. I also made a decision on the company. I knew Travis couldn't do it alone, so I offered him a 30-day period during which we would seek for purchasers, and both of us would be out of the ownership of the business. I thought I'd suggest to the buyers that they keep Travis as the programmer debugger. In my opinion, he was and is the best I've ever seen at it. As I already stated, my people skills are terrible. Several hours later, I went to bed and slept for 3 solid hours. The Monday meeting with Travis went unexpectedly well. He also told me that because I had destroyed their plans, he reflected on what would have happened if I had been her spouse. He agreed to the 30-day plan and suggested that we hire someone to assess the value of the firm. I contacted around and located a company in Lansing, Michigan that performed such exams. They offered a flat fee plus expenses and stated that someone will be at our premises by the end of the week. When I returned home that night, Mom was still there. She wanted to know what I'd been thinking about till 3 a.m. I explained my plans and what I had accomplished thus far. She then astonished me by saying, "Why don't you help me sell my house and convert that large room above your garage into an apartment for me? I adore it here. It is quiet. The air is clear out here and I enjoy being near you." I thought about it for a few minutes before telling her. "That's an excellent concept, Mom. You know, I enjoy having you around, and your appreciating it out here has made me very pleased. I am also going to follow your suggestions from Sunday. I'm heading to Conway's Dance Emporium, a country dance hall bar, to get back into life." That resulted in a kiss and a request that I take the day off work to assist her in moving some of her belongings here. She'd use the guest room until the garage apartment was finished. The Friday paper arrived, and in the legal section was a notice of the filing of a petition for divorce for Wriggles versus Wriggles. She believed my ultimatum. Travis and I sold out for more. We received far more money than we anticipated when we sold the company. We did include an amendment in the sales agreement requiring the buyers to either keep our staff or pay them all of their accrued leave pay plus an additional 2 years' compensation. Travis stayed and stored his money in a secure location. I put mine in a trust that invested in blue-chip corporations. Mom moved in. I moved on to become a regular at Conway's. I was popular since I seldom missed a dance, never asked a lady who was with a male for a dance, and never declined one, if a lady asks me. The only trouble I had was when I was dancing with a lady and a drunk attempted to cut in. I solved the majority of those issues by informing the alcoholic that while I would be happy to dance with him, I insisted on leading. That worked virtually every time, and several drunks were laughed out of the establishment. I'd been going there for approximately 6 months when I noticed a familiar face. I saw the girl from high school, and I had treated her poorly. I had been dating her for a few months before abruptly terminating our relationship. I did not offer her an explanation, only that we were finished. Nora Bennett was an amazing girl, and what I did to her was horrible. Even after all these years, I feel horrible about it. She saw me practically as soon as I saw her, and she made a beeline for me. I was not expecting the gorgeous smile she was wearing. She greeted me with a giggle. "How are you doing? Did anyone shatter any hearts today?" Then she grabbed me and kissed me so fiercely that my toes remained curled for 5 minutes after the kiss. The clapping from the peanut gallery was raucous and boisterous. Then she brought me to the table where a few of females were seated. She continued to deflate my ego by introducing me as the scum sucker who dumped me back in high school. She then laughed and said, "I think I'll punish him by making him dance with me for the rest of the night." I got into the game's atmosphere and said, "No, not that. The Constitution prohibited harsh and unusual punishment." Then I took her hand, and we danced for the remainder of the night. As I was leaving, Nora kissed me again and handed me a piece of paper with her home and business phone numbers on it. "Call me Eddie." I had a wonderful experience. I began dating Nora on a regular basis. Her name was changed to Hale because her husband, Victor Hale, was no longer with her. She was the mother of 10-year-old twins, Sandy and Sarah, and had no ill will toward what transpired in high school. As she mentioned, we were 16 and 17 years old. "You say you made a mistake when you ended our relationship, but I also made some faults along the road. It's all part of growing up." Yes, I know you're correct. But what I did worried me. I am glad we have reconnected. I adore your gals, and they appear to like me. Would you like to see where we are heading with this? I stated that it doesn't have to be sexual. We're both not virgins. But I'd like to have not only dates with you, but also family dates with your daughters. Do they like to swim and eat barbecue? They both enjoy swimming. They haven't had BBQ in a while, so expect some questions and weird looks." Then she proceeded. "Don't discard sex too fast. I enjoy having sex with Victor as well as the few times I've had it before and after him. There is nothing a caring partner does that makes it undesirable. I had an experience with an insensitive a-hole who only wanted to get off. Knowing you, I am confident that you are not a selfish son of a bitch. Okay, how about we organize a barbecue this Sunday? I have an indoor pool and enjoy grilling. The girls can tire themselves out and you can bond with Mother. She's always liked you better than me." I laughed as I got to whack the BBQ, which went beautifully. Nora and her daughters had a great day, and her girls had as well. 5 girls tore up the pool and wore themselves out after the barbecue. Nora and her daughters were frequent weekend visits whenever feasible. I had sleepovers for both my nieces and Nora's girls. Carrie believed she didn't need to be there as a chaperone, but she only missed a few of the gatherings because she enjoyed swimming. After nearly 6 months, Nora inquired as to where I saw our relationship headed. I responded, "I've been afraid of hurting you again, but I love you and want to be with you always." She grinned, hugged me tightly, and kissed me. "Will you marry me?" I inquired, then dug into my pocket for the ring box. "I've been carrying this for a month, but I was worried you'd think it was too quick." She grabbed tighter and said, "Yes, yes, yes, I will marry you. Would you like to know what the girls think?" She laughed and proceeded. "You'd better not mention that if we marry, the girls will be able to use the pool every day. That's an unfair bribe." We sat the girls down. I started with girls. "I have a crucial inquiry for you. You're not in trouble. However, this is vital. Would you be okay if I married your mother? I am not attempting to replace your father, but I'd like to be your stepfather. I adore you too, as though you were my daughters." Sandy, always the bold one, she put her finger on her cheek and added, "It will cost you. We require constant pool access and, at a minimum, pizza once per month." Nora, Sarah, and I laughed, and when I extended my arms, both girls ran over and hugged me. Then Sarah did something unexpected. She kissed my cheek and quietly inquired, "Can I call you Daddy once you marry Mom?" I'm not sure where the onions came from, but my eyes began to water, and I was unable to talk for a few seconds. "I would be proud to be your father, sweetheart, and you would be one of my favorite daughters." SWAT this time from 2 tiny girls who grinned and said nearly in unison, "We're your only daughters, so we have to be your favorites." Hey, that's correct. It wouldn't be fair to pick just one of you as my favorite, but I adore both. So you were both favorites who drew Nora into the group embrace, and I felt her tears on my shoulder as she buried her face. She said, "You have made me extremely happy and proud of you. You are going to be their father and my husband until the end of time." That eventually turned out to be the 3rd finest day of my life. Nora and Mom then went into planning mode. They agreed that because we had both been married before, we should have a family wedding. Nora's parents were gone, so Mom and all 5 girls were in the wedding party. Travis was my best man. He did, in fact, turn a fresh leaf and find his own fiancée. The wedding was the 2nd best day of my life. We took all 5 girls to Orlando and spent a lot of money on souvenirs and meals. But 5 fatigued girls and a very happy wife made for an excellent honeymoon. Carrie didn't even protest when we assigned her to look after the younger children, while Nora and I had so much free time. About 4 months after we married, a police detective arrived at our house. When I answered the door and confirmed his identification, he said, "I'm looking for a Nora Hale." "Is she here?" "Yes, she is, and it is. Mrs. Whitaker appears now. I will go grab her. Could you please come in and have a seat? She is watching over the girls in the pool." I went and got the girls out of the pool and informed Nora about the policeman. I told her she didn't have to be afraid because I would always be by her side. I am not afraid, nervous but not afraid. With that, we entered the den, where I had seated the detective. "Ma'am, I'm Detective Sergeant Greeley. It is my sad duty to inform you that Victor Hale, your daughter's father, was discovered dead 3 days ago. The preliminary autopsy results show that he died of a heart attack caused by unlawful narcotic abuse. He did not overdose the last time he took, but it did send his damaged heart into complete cardiac failure. We only located you through his emergency contact list. He must have kept track of your whereabouts here because it stated that you were at this place." Nora gave a long sigh. "I know it sounds heartless, but I have no sympathies for the man who abandoned his family when my children were only 4 years old. I am sorry he has died. And I did love him once, but he's been dead to me for over 6 years." The officer gave Nora a copy of the report as well as a card with instructions on how to obtain copies of the death certificate. He indicated that she would be eligible to receive Social Security benefits until the daughters were 18. He said, "We will send you all of the personal effects that we discovered on his body and at his residence. Your ex-husband was not destitute. There were numerous documents, and you will receive them all. I hope you find anything useful in this content. Your ex was likewise someone who fought hard to remain unseen. We uncovered 4 distinct IDs and had a difficult time determining which was genuine. The military fingerprint database revealed that your ex was actually Victor Hale." About 2 weeks later, Nora received a hefty package of paperwork. She asked me to help her go through it. We planned to take the girls to visit my sister for a long weekend so that we could go over everything. We started with the easiest items to identify. There were supporting paperwork for all 4 IDs. We put these to the side. There were bills and bank statements. We put these in a different pile. Then there were 3 insurance policies. The policies were for $250,000 each. Each of the girls and Nora were designated as beneficiaries. We kept these with the bank statements. There were titles for 7 distinct cars. I mentally scratched my head. Why would he own 7 automobiles, and where were they? I arranged those documents in a third pile. There were also other deeds to property. The majority were in or near Chicago, although one was in the Florida Keys, and another was for a property in Hawaii. These are in the pile alongside the automobiles. The largest discovery was a sealed letter addressed to Nora. There was something other than paper in the envelope. Nora was shivering as she attempted to open it. She finally handed it to me. I cautiously opened the envelope, revealing the key and a business card taped to it. I handed Nora the letter and key. "Nora, if you're reading this, I've died. Every day I've regretted abandoning you and my daughters. When I did, I thought it was the safest thing I could do for all 3 of you. I was already beyond assistance from the medicines I was taking. I was weak, venal, and self-centered. I've been able to collect a large amount of assets and money. I became a courier for some shady folks who paid me generously. It was possible for me to acquire a lot of other people's belongings. I realize it won't alleviate the anguish I've caused, but maybe what you find in the safe deposit box where the key goes will help you live more comfortably. The box is kept in a bank in Barbados. The name on the reverse of the card affixed to the key includes an extra envelope for you. To get the envelope, simply offer the card to the man. The card also contains his phone number. If you call him when he asks how you obtained his name, say Sumatra 1972, he will understand and schedule a time for you to receive the envelope, which has a permission to access the bank. The envelope also contains enough money for you and someone to defend you as you travel to and from the location. Please kiss my daughters and find a suitable man to live with for the rest of your life. You deserved it. Victor." We opted to obtain the death certificates first. When the death certificates arrived, I instructed Nora to claim the insurance money. She phoned the local agent, who confirmed that the insurance were still valid and had been prepaid. She was told that the checks would arrive in 2 to 3 weeks due to some verification. Nora provided the man our address and explained that the girls were only 11 years old. Therefore, the checks they received had to show that they were minors. He thanked her for providing explanation. The next step was to obtain Social Security benefits for her daughters. One weird thing about the 4IDs is that they all have the same SSN. Then we arranged for Nora to meet the stranger who carried the envelope. Then we planned for Mom to watch the children. When Nora dialed the number, she made it clear that I was going to be her bodyguard. She turned our phone on speaker, and we heard what sounded like other phones being dialed. When the phone was finally answered, a voice said, "Where did you get this number?" Nora responded, "Sumatra, 1972. "Very good. I am at the Federal Square building room for 13. I will see you at your convenience tomorrow between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. "Goodbye." Nora glanced at me and asked, "How in the name of the Creator will he know who we are?" "We will take the letter to court. I'm not sure how else he would verify. You are the one who receives the envelope. If he asks, we'll show him the keys, but we won't give it to him. It's also possible that while he's in the neighborhood, he's had somebody check in on you." The meeting was just as weird as everything else that had happened. As soon as we entered the room, a monitor on the wall in front of us lit up with a symbol, and a voice remarked, "I see you brought your new husband, Mrs. Whitaker. That's good. Now, if you could hold up the business card and the key, we can move on." Nora held the objects up while a drawer pulled out of the wall beneath the monitor. Nora went over to retrieve the envelope and then took a step back. A voice said, "Inside the envelope are 2 open-date round-trip tickets to Barbados. In addition, the codes include money bank instructions. You will need access to the bank accounts and safe deposit box. Good day." The screen went blank and the door behind us opened. We departed. I took some time that day to reflect. I told Nora what I was thinking. I phoned the investigator who came to the house. "Can you tell who owns a vehicle if I give you its ID number? We do not believe it is illegal, but we want to ensure that if they are not registered as held by one of the 4IDs, we will attempt to return them to the last recorded owner. There are also other properties that require ownership verification." He said he'd be happy to. I faxed him the papers containing the VIN numbers and property addresses. 2 hours later, he returned with the news that all of the cars had been purchased at police auctions, were registered to Victor Hale, and were now the legal property of his next of kin. The estates were all owned by a trust, with Nora and the girls inheriting the trust upon Victor Hill's death. He gave us the address of the law company that handled the trust documents. My next suggestion was to go find the automobiles. That turned out to be no problem because they were at a local warehouse that was listed as the owner's address. We got an additional express package containing the vehicle's keys and a garage door opener-type gadget that, according to the accompanying note, would let the person carrying the device entry to the facility where the vehicles were housed. We knew what the cars and trucks would be, but not in what condition. The 3 pickup vehicles were customized street cruisers. The 3 vehicles were an Audi Quattro, a BMW M5 sedan, and a Mercedes limousine. The final vehicle was a Honda Goldwing with a sidecar. Next, we decided to look into Chicago properties. The trust law firm was our first visit for identity verification. The majority of the assets were warehouses, and each of them was profitable. One was a 5-bedroom Gold Coast penthouse condo on Lakeshore Doctor near Grant Park. The other 2 properties can wait. The vacation to Barbados took place 3 weeks after school ended for the summer, and the girls moved into my house with Nora's girls while we went to recover the contents of the accounts from the safe deposit box. When we arrived, we proceeded to our hotel to rest. I was tired of being in a different nation, so I didn't sleep well. Around 2 a.m., I heard the door open since we had registered as Mr. and Mrs. Whitaker. Someone from the United States had given over our details. 2 men entered the room and froze. As I turned on the lights, their night vision goggles overloaded, and while they were temporarily blinded, I smashed the biggest one with a solid steel rod I had brought along. He collapsed quickly. When I switched on the other one, he was attempting to retrieve something from his pocket. I hit him, and he collapsed. I contacted hotel security and the local police. Needless to say, I had finished my night's sleep. The cops recognized the two bad guys and commended me for apprehending them without shooting them. The hotel fired the night desk clerk, who was caught after giving the bad guys the key card. The leak of information from the United States would not be uncovered now. The hotel paid for our stay, including whatever meals we ate at their restaurant. Nora remained surprisingly quiet until everyone left. Then she rushed into my arms, sobbing and shivering. I was so terrified you'd be wounded. You're a brave man and my hero. I love you. I'll be okay. Please hold me. I called back to the States first thing in the morning. I read the law firm's main partner and new asshole and informed him that if I discovered that one of his staff had given these individuals the information, I would buy his firm. I informed him that the two persons who broke into the room were in police custody and would be questioned until they revealed everything they knew. I also called home and spoke with her, telling her to contact one of the local security agencies and hire guards for the house and grounds. I also promised her that we would make sure she didn't run out of money or lose her job. I promised her that I would hire her as part of my new company. After the excitement subsided and Nora had calmed down, we went to the bank and moved all of her bank accounts to our home bank. We had packed a large suitcase in case we required it for the contents of the safe deposit box. We didn't need it. The box contained a tiny stack of bearer bonds from several foreign countries, as well as stock certificates from numerous U.S. and European corporations. There were also 2 envelopes marked "Delivered to the FBI upon my death," and a message saying not to open them. After all was said and done, everyone in our mixed family became millionaires. Nora and her daughters were preventing me from selling my company because of their father's money. We also identified the source of the information leak. The trust firm had delegated responsibility for the account to a senior executive. He was scared they'd lose the trust commission. So he organized the assassination attempt. We sued the firm, and following the settlement, it went out of business. Then, on Independence Day last summer, I received 2 vital gifts, making that day the finest of my life. Nora handed me the twins' adoption paperwork and a blue pregnancy test stick. I was a new parent to 2 12-year-olds and about to become a father to a newborn. Life is quite good. Here's the next story. I would imagine that hardly many marriages end because a 7-year-old child watches you choose which tie to wear. But that is exactly how my marriage to style ended. I met Mary and Estella Burns in my senior year of college. She was not a classmate of mine. She worked as a waiter at a pizza business near university that my buddies and I went to every 2 weeks. George, Sam, Mike, and I stepped into Stella's office on her second day of work. It was somewhat cliché on my part, but Stella instantly stated that she liked Stella over Stella. Work. Estella came to collect our orders. I mentioned a large pepperoni, a pitcher of Coors Light, and a date with you. She glanced at her notepad, scribbling down the order, and when she was finished, she looked up at me and said, "I'm off Wednesdays and Thursdays. Which one do you want? Cannot I have both? I suppose it depends on how the first one goes." The first one went quite well, as did the subsequent ones, especially the 8th. When we first made love, Stealth was a sophomore in high school when she had to drop out due to a lack of financial support after her parents died in a car accident. I found out the whole story on our 5th date. I asked her if there wasn't enough insurance money to help and if they had any. "I don't know about it. Nobody ever phoned me about it. I knew they had money in the bank, but the bank refused to let me access it since my name was not on the account and I had no legal claim to it. Didn't you employ an attorney?" "I couldn't afford an attorney. Perhaps fate brought us together so that I could aid you. It just so happens that my Uncle Dan is a lawyer, therefore I can receive a family discount." Long story short, Uncle Dan not only obtained the release of her bank funds, but he also discovered that her father had a safe deposit box. When it was opened, they discovered a $100,000 life insurance policy with a double indemnity clause for accidental death. naming her as the beneficiary. There were also paperwork indicating that her father and mother received life insurance as part of their working benefits. $10,000 for her father, $5,000 for her mother. Both plans also provided double coverage for accidental death, and she was designated as the secondary beneficiary. In 3 weeks, she transformed from a broke former student to a young woman with over $225,000 in her bank account, whom I proposed to. Still, after I finished school, she consented, but only on the condition that she finish her degree and find a job first, so that when I graduated, I would already have a job. It was with the company where I had interned the previous 2 summers, so I was already familiar with the setting when I moved to full-time job. The money was fantastic, and I had some funds, including $10,000 that my parents gave me for graduation. That was enough for a down payment, so I purchased a ranch-style home with 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a huge backyard. Stella noticed a large patio with a hot tub tucked away to the side. She was furious that I did not include her in the decision-making process with the insurance money. We could have made a greater down payment or even paid for it entirely. If we were married, I would have done so. But we aren't married. But we will be. Only when you've completed your education and secured employment. And it is at least 1.5 years away. A lot can happen within that time. What exactly are you trying to say? You'll meet new individuals and you might find someone who fascinates you. When you first start working, you might want to discover whether there's anything worth exploring. You might encounter someone there who piques your interest. As previously stated, anything is possible during that period. You do not trust me. I have some doubts. You will not marry me till you have finished school. Even if marriage would not prevent you from taking classes, you will not move in with me until then. I have stated my motives to you. Yes, I understand your rationale, but that alone is enough to make me skeptical. To have a complete college experience, you must meet new people and attempt new things. Anything can happen. Actually, that has already happened. Twice in the past 2 weeks. You turned me down for a date because you had plans with some of the other girls. You hang out with the girls, and you know where they go. The boys follow. I hope to meet them. And occasionally things happen. What can I do to convince you that you are the only man I want? That is something you will need to work out for yourself. Not long after that talk, I asked her what she wanted to do the following Friday, only to learn that she had already planned a date that evening. But I am free on Saturday. That will not work. I've already arranged a date for Saturday. Goodbye. So I hung up. In actuality, I didn't have a date for Saturday evening, but I'm pleased I told her. What I really had planned for Saturday was a cookout. I invited all of my new neighbors to get to know them better. I sent out an invitation that claimed it would start at 2 p.m. It might easily last into the evening. Even after half an hour, they called me back. I need to explain. I interrupted her, saying I was not interested in any explanations. You're free to do whatever you want. All I ask is that you do not wear my engagement ring when you meet another man. Have fun. Goodbye. I hung up again. She did not call back. I believe the barbecue was a success. I came to know my neighbors and they grew to know me. A few of them questioned why a single man without children needed a 4-bedroom house. I mentioned that I had a fiancé, and we intend to fill those chambers with children as soon as we marry. Naturally, they asked why she wasn't at the barbecue, and I answered that she was a college student with duties she couldn't avoid. On Sunday, she turned up about midday, around 15 minutes after her arrival. She wanted to know how my date went. I told her we ate a lot, spoke a lot, and that was it. She didn't press me for more information, but I could sense she expected more than I offered her. I didn't ask her about her date, and I'm not sure if she was relieved or disappointed. The subject was closed. We spent the remainder of the day discussing what needed to be done around the house and what we hoped to do in the future. Still wanted to make use of the vast backyard by installing a pool. I suggested something we could do once we saved up some money. and she reminded me that once she got married, she'd have lots of money. I said nothing in return. I made no efforts toward intimacy. I left it up to her, and she made no attempt to initiate anything either. She left at 8 to return to her home, and I didn't see her on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. Not that I expected to. I recalled all of the evenings I'd spent working late or looking for materials at the library. After lessons, I phoned her on Thursday to see what she wanted to do on Friday. She claimed she already had a date. I wished her a pleasant time and hung up. She had no idea, but all of her dates had ended at home on Friday. After work, I went for drinks with coworkers and didn't get home until 9 p.m. When I arrived, Estelle's vehicle was parked in the driveway. When I came inside, I discovered her in the bedroom, hanging clothing in the closet. She turned to face me and said, "A while ago, I asked you what I needed to do to show you that you are the man I want. You mentioned that I'd have to figure it out on my own. I concluded that the best way to show you was to move in with you. That's what I am doing." In my opinion, the fact that we had settled into a really comfortable pattern was a positive step forward. There were occasions when she couldn't get home for dinner due to club events or group projects, but this wasn't uncommon. I had done the same in school. My employment occasionally demanded that I travel overnight. Twice. I called home in the evening to let Stell know where I was staying and how she might contact me. My calls were routed to the home answering machine and her cell voicemail. When I questioned where she had been in those situations, she stated she had gone out for drinks with several of her girlfriends. This looked reasonable to me. Why stay home alone when you can spend time with your friends? I did the same thing in school. Why shouldn't she? I occasionally wondered if she was seeing other guys, but I had plenty of single friends who attended all the hotspots, and I was convinced they'd let me know if she was dating anyone. And she completely spoiled me in her personal life 5 times a week, frequently both days on the weekend. Everything was going well until a condom ruptured, and we had to marry. She was 4 months pregnant as she stepped across the platform to receive her diploma. And no, Bobby was not a fool. I took a DNA test without Stella's knowledge. As soon as Christine was released from the hospital, she became mine. I know I said I trusted Stella. However, one of our former presidents famously remarked, "Trust but verify." Stella was unable to have children due to problems following Christy's birth, which would have an impact on our marriage later on. The next 5 years of our marriage were wonderful, and even after Christy entered school, she got a job and returned to work. I wasn't delighted with her working, but Estelle pointed out that with Christy at school and no younger children at home to care for, she was going mad with nothing to keep her busy. So I conceded. Her first year of work went smoothly, but she was promoted and transferred to a different department. Not long after, I learned that the girls I work with wanted me to go out for drinks after work. "It's Wednesday, so you'll have to prepare dinner for yourself and Christy." What disturbed me the most in that moment was the absence of any. Would you mind if would it be okay if I was told exactly what she was about to do, whether I liked it or not? I was savvy enough not to make a big deal about it, but I was unhappy for the first few weeks. She'd arrive home around 6:45 p.m. It became 7:15, then 8:15. That concerned me a little, and I expressed my dissatisfaction. Of course, this caused some coolness in the bedroom for a while, but I was too preoccupied to focus on it. Fred Bascom died shortly after I was promoted, and I took over his post. Fred had been managing numerous projects, and the majority of the crucial knowledge about them was in his head, not on paper or on his work computer, and it died alongside him. As a result, I was struggling to manage the tasks and fulfill deadlines. The job also needed travel. The majority of journeys were brief, lasting no more than 1 night, sometimes 2 nights. By the time this became usual, I had already made 12 journeys. Still, I normally departed for work about an hour before me, so I was the one who had to drive Christy to school. I was in the bedroom with Christy, who was always chattering about all of her classmates. I had a meeting with a new client that morning and wanted to dress suitably for my new position as manager. I was browsing through my ties, attempting to find one that looked good with my outfit. Christy mentioned that her mother has the same dilemma. She is unsure which dress to wear on her date. That piqued my interest, so I said, "When does Mom go on dates?" "Mom goes on dates while you are out of town. Every time I go out of town. Not always, but most of the time, those who date meet her here. Sometimes. Does she bring them back into the house? I'm not sure because when she comes home, I'm generally in bed. Who looks after you while Mom goes on dates?" Angie. Sometimes. Katie. These were the names of the two teenage females that lived next door. I had hired both of them as babysitters when I took Stella out to dinner and dancing, something I probably had no intention of ever doing again. I was not going to approach Stella based only on a 7-year-old's remarks. Not that I questioned what Christy had told me, but I wanted concrete evidence. After calling a few detective services, I determined that hiring a private investigator was out of my budget, so I decided to handle things myself. Despite having second thoughts after paying for 2 nights in a hotel and renting a car from Avis for 2 days, I informed Stell that I was going to Chicago for 2 days. I packed a bag and loaded it into my car before driving to work in the morning. I left work early and parked at the rental site where I could view stills and the automobile. When she returned from work, I followed her home. I parked a block away from her home and waited to see what happened next. About 20 minutes after her arrival, Angie Larson approached the front door and rang the bell. The door opened and she stepped inside. 10 minutes later, an automobile arrived in front of the house, Still came out, got into the car, and drove away. I followed them. The car pulled into the Alhambra Hotel parking lot, and when they stepped out, I noticed the driver was another lady. I was unprepared for that. Following her, I figured Stell was with another man, possibly going to a motel or something similar. I couldn't go inside to see what was going on because I didn't have any disguises. All I could do was sit and wait for her to come out, then observe what she did next. This turned out to be a mistake. She left with the other woman around 9:30 p.m. and returned home. I returned to the room I had hired and attempted to make sense of what I had just witnessed. The following day, during my lunch break, I went shopping. I purchased a wig and a fake beard from a specialty store. I also picked up a pair of horn-rimmed sunglasses and removed the lenses. That evening, when Stella came from work, I was able to tell her again. She went home. Angie arrived as usual, but Stella left in her own car. I followed her to the Meadows area where she paused in front of a house. A woman emerged, got into Stella's car, and they drove away. This was not the same woman I'd been with the night before. Once again, they arrived to the Alhambra. I gave them 5 minutes to enter and relax before changing into my disguise and following them in. I was familiar with the Alhambra and knew that the bar section was softly lighted, as opposed to the stage and dance floor, which were beautifully lit. My disguise was simple, and I was counting on it to be sufficient in the dimly lit tavern. It still noticed me, recognized me, and asked what I was doing. I only tell her the truth, I know. If I was willing to go to such lengths, why not face her directly? Why not tell her? I assumed she was cheating on me because of what a 7-year-old had stated. That would have altered our relationship in ways I couldn't foresee. No evidence. Just a child's comment. No thanks. If there was to be a confrontation, it would only occur once. I had good proof. I picked a seat at the far end of the bar, as far as possible from the dance floor, but still with a good view of it. I was still there. And the woman she had picked up was seated at a table. 2 tables jammed together, with 4 other women at 6:45. The band arrived and took their seats, and by 7 p.m., they were playing. Men began approaching their table to invite the ladies to dance, and the women would rise and proceed to the dance floor. Still, she never danced with just one man, and all of her moves were clean and casual. There was no inappropriate contact. The one guy's hand began to move toward her backside. She was not having it. At 10 minutes to 9, she stepped away from him, leaving him alone in the middle of the dance floor. The women began grabbing their purses to go. I got up and proceeded to my rental car, while her companion came out, got into Estelle's car, and drove away. I followed her as she dropped the woman off at her home before returning to our place. Sitting in the rented car, I told myself I was an idiot for ever doubting my wife. She was not cheating. It was just a girl's night out. But I remained a bit curious. So one evening, I mentioned what Christy had told me. It makes me inquisitive. You dress up to go on dates, and sometimes someone picks you up right from your house. Is there anything I should worry about? Not precisely. I've been using your time away to catch up with the gals I work with. And how about the guy that drives you around? It is not a dude. It is one of the girls. We take turns being the drivers. That explained what I'd seen, but it brought up unsettling memories. When I mentioned dates, still pale. Why would this happen? My ideas became increasingly disorganized. If she was not doing anything in the evenings, then it had to be at a different time. The one thing I couldn't account for were her working hours, which made me wonder about her lunch breaks. 2 days later, I was back in my rented car watching Steele's car in the business parking lot. I arrived half an hour before her regular lunch break. I was familiar with her midday routine because I had taken her out to eat several times previously. It was a good thing I arrived early because she left the building at 11:45, not noon. She got in her car, drove out of the lot, and proceeded west toward the motel. As I followed her, I kept wondering why she'd cheat on me. What had I done or not done to precipitate this? My thoughts were interrupted when her left turn signal flashed, so I quickly glanced to the left. I noticed a motel still made the turn, but instead of turning into the motel parking lot, she drove right into the village parking lot at a restaurant next to the motel. I sat in my car, watching the restaurant entrance until Stell emerged, and then I followed her back to work as she entered the building. I cursed myself for being such a suspicious person. I lingered long enough to see whether she left work early, but she arrived at her usual time and drove straight home. But I had hired the place for 3 days, primarily to punish myself. I rented a car and spent the next 2 days sitting outside her business. I am bored to tears. She never left the building for lunch or left work early. I returned to the apartment and rushed home. When I arrived, they were still cooking dinner, after we had eaten. I played with Christy until she went to bed. Then Stella and I cuddled on the couch and watched TV until we went to bed. When I got out of the restroom, I discovered Stella naked on the bed. Her legs extended and she smiled. I pondered how I had ever doubted this woman. Months passed by. But there is something to human nature. It impacts everyone in some manner. In my instance, Christy put a seed of suspicion in my mind which never went away. Maybe it wouldn't have taken root if we hadn't behaved like that before we married. That, mixed with what Christy had told me, lingered and intensified. I always kept an eye out for indicators that he was still cheating on me, but I never saw anything. This was meant to be a 2-day excursion, and I wasn't expecting to return until Friday evening, but we finished business by Thursday evening. On Friday, I was able to book an early morning flight and be home in time to surprise Stella and invite her out to lunch. I didn't see Stella's car in the parking lot, so I walked inside and asked the receptionist to contact her. I was surprised to learn that Stell did not work on Fridays and had converted to a 4-day work week approximately 6 months ago. I left wondering what Stealth had been doing with these projects. Free Fridays. I know nothing about it. I preserved my cool by pretending to be obese, dumb, and joyful. I wasn't fat or happy, but dumb appeared to fit and everything seemed okay. But the next Friday, I was back in a rented car parked just down the street from our house, still departed shortly after 9, and I followed her to Winsome Drive. I was familiar with the site. I had gone there a half-dozen times for barbecues and gatherings. It belonged to Harvey Forbes. Harvey owned the business, which was still operational. He was not her supervisor, though. Her employer was Dave Wisner, who was 3 or 4 levels below Harvey in the management chain. She left Harvey's house around 430, and I followed her to King Soopers, where I imagined she was getting groceries for dinner that night. She didn't have time for anything else, so she got ahead of me. So I gave up the pursuit. I returned the rental car and went to Bud's bar for a beverage before returning home at my usual time after dinner. We sat Christy in front of the television to watch Dorothy explore, and then we began scrubbing the dishes. I scrubbed and dried, passing her a dish while asking how long and why, what, how long and why. How long and why, what? How long have you cheated on me with Harvey Forbes? And why the hell are you so crazy? Spare me the outrage, okay? I arrived home early last Friday to invite you to lunch, only to learn that you no longer work on Fridays. That was something you conveniently failed to mention. Naturally, I was intrigued about what you do on your free Fridays. I followed you to Harvey's this morning. I sat outside and observed you till you left at 4:30. So, back to my question. How long and why? She stood there holding a plate, staring at the sink for a few seconds before saying, 7 months. And because I wanted to. You wanted to. Before I met you, I was looking for anything adventurous in life. I've been with around a dozen guys since I met you. I had a few flings. I adored making love with many men. They were all different, various heights, forms, and methods of making love. Then we married, and all these years, I have been devoted to you. I've met and seen a lot of guys who make me wonder what they're like in bed, but I simply looked and pondered. It was the company's Christmas celebration. You told me to have fun and that you'd be the designated driver that night, about 2/3 of the way through the celebration. I was feeling fairly good. I went to the restroom, and when I emerged, Harvey had just exited the men's room. He noticed me and remarked I looked fantastic that evening. Then he joked that if I wasn't married, he'd toss me over his shoulder and carry me back to the cave. I knew he was simply flirting, but I believe I startled him when I replied my marriage would not stop him. He didn't say anything, simply stuck out his hand. I grabbed it, and he walked me down the hall to a vacant office. He walked me to the desk, and after it was finished, he indicated he wanted more than just a quickie. I asked him to let me know where and when. He said he'd be in touch, and we returned to the party. I was so turned on by that. Damn it, I almost killed you when we arrived home that night. I had sex with you 5 times more than before, yet I still craved more. I could not leave you alone that weekend. Do you really want me out by Sunday? Remember? I remembered. And I wondered what had gotten into her. She resumed her story. On Monday, Harvey invited me to his office and inquired about my intentions. When I mentioned where and when, honestly, I did not intend it. It was something I said in the heat of the moment. But standing in front of his desk, seeing the yearning on his face, something changed in me. And I told him I wasn't kidding. He told me to lock the door before taking me to his desk. Following that, he requested me to take one of the new 4-day positions that were available so that we could spend the entire day together. She sighed and admitted that it was enjoyable for the time being. You sound like you're going to ditch old Harvey. Now that you know, I will have to. Why? What do you mean and why? Why stop? Just because I know you would allow me to spend Fridays with Harvey. I wouldn't allow you to do anything. It's up to you who you sleep with. It doesn't matter to me at all. I did not expect that. Whether someone had told me you wouldn't care whether I saw other men, I would have laughed at them. You don't mind? Why should I? This is your body, not mine. I can't tell you what you can and cannot do with it. What I can tell you is that because you opted to give it to someone else, I no longer need it. What exactly do you mean by that? Exactly what I said when you said yes. You dedicated yourself solely to me. The fact that you offered yourself to Mr. Forbes means that you no longer belong only to me. I don't share with my wife. You are no longer mine. Now you belong to Harvey or whoever you choose to give yourself to. Once we've finished washing the dishes, I'll shift my belongings to the guest bedroom. Why? What I did not harm us. I give you so much. But sometimes you push me away. I am still madly in love with you. Having a little sex on the side hasn't changed my feelings for you. It may not have happened for you, but it is certainly less my. It aches. I believe you are overreacting. I am no longer interested in what you think. I deal with facts, not opinions. Fact 1, you cheated on me and I found out. Fact 2, I cannot continue a connection with someone I do not trust, and by cheating on me, you establish that I cannot trust you. Fact 3, the divorce laws in this state are prejudiced against men. If I file for divorce, I will be broke, living in a tent in the woods with limited visitation rights. This outcome is unacceptable to me, so there will be no divorce. Instead, I'll transfer everything into the guest bedroom, and life in this house will proceed as usual, except that there will be no sexual relationship between you and me. Mr. Forbes can take care of your sexual demands. With that, I left her in the kitchen and went to the guest bedroom. She emerged in the corridor about 5 minutes later and stood calmly watching me. After a while, she asked, "What can I do to persuade you to change your mind? I love you, and you know it. I do not want this. I need you in my bed so that we may make love. What can you do? Go back in time before you become involved with Forbes, and do not do it. Damn you, Bob. Can't you see that I want you, not Forbes? I love you and make love to you several times a week. Do not do this to me because you love me. Perhaps it's simply guilt sex, so you don't feel bad for stabbing me in the back. Don't give me that nonsense. Long before Harvey, I craved you so much that you occasionally pushed me away. That was then. This is now fine. How about I play dirty, and then what? I cannot sleep across from you without wanting to kick down your door and pounce on your bones, so I'll have to move out. And if I do that, I may as well file for divorce. On what grounds? I don't need grounds. This is a fault-free state. You know what's going to happen. You stated it yourself. You'll be living in a tent somewhere and might see Christy once a month, if that. The court will grant you visitation rights. However, you will need to coordinate with me. Without a doubt, I will be tough to reach at times. On the other hand, you would only be required to pay alimony until I remarried, and I'm sure Harvey would jump at the opportunity to place a ring on my finger. He's always desired children, but he can't have them because he is infertile. He has always envied the fact that we have Christy. I think he'd be an excellent stepfather for her. You would not. Do you want to bet? I'll make things easy for you. You do not have to return to our bedroom. Just stroll across the hall and have sex with me at least 5 times a week, and your first visit must be tonight. As a bonus, I'll cease seeing Harvey. I'll leave the lights on for you, she remarked as she entered the living room. She had me and knew it. I knew her too well when she seized control of a situation. Nothing could stop her from charging on at full speed. For me, it was about you. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. All because a 7-year-old said a word into my ears. That is brilliant. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, leave a comment below to share your thoughts on what happened. Take care.